tonight and taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us this evening. My name is Jamila Jordan, and I'm working with a planning firm called MIG, and we're helping the county to conduct these series of meetings that have been taking place. And again, we want to thank you so much for coming out tonight. We've done a lot of outreach in the community, and this is a pretty good showing. So if you have it, I want to encourage you to sign in at the front and go ahead and collect the materials that we have available to you, as well as any speaker slips if you want to speak during the public comment period. Go to the back and Ellie will help you with that. In addition, I want to let you know that we have Spanish translation available. And Javier, could you raise your hand in the back right there? If anyone would like a headset to help with some Spanish interpretation, we have that available to you. So now we can go ahead and get started, and I'd like to start with the roll call process. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. The committee members chosen by the board are Supervisor Adrian Tissier.
Here.
Supervisor Warren Slocum.
Here.
Daly City Council Member Gonzalo Sal Torres. Absent. East Palo Alto Council Member Laura Martinez.
Here.
We have,
hello.
oh, here. Perfect, thank you. Public members who are on the commission as well. Hayden Lee of Millbrae.
Here.
Raymond Lee of San Mateo.
Here.
Barbara Arrieta of Pacifica. Here. Mr. William Knack of Menlo Park.
He will not be here this evening, he called me.
Okay, absent. Rebecca Eisen of Daly City.
Here.
And we have our two alternates who are also here as well, Ms. Annie Loya.
Present.
And Mr. Eric Reed.
Here.
Excellent. So, again, I want to welcome all of you, and thank you so much for coming out tonight. This series of District Lines Advisory Committee meetings are an opportunity for the committee members to hear from the public regarding the current district boundaries and potential changes. The Board of Supervisors created the 9-member District Lines Advisory Committee after voters changed the county charter in November of 2012. The change requires that only voters within a district can elect a supervisor who lives in that same district to represent them. Under the prior system, voters countywide elected all 5 supervisors. However, with heightened interest in district-based elections, the Board of Supervisors tasked the committee before you with hearing public comment, studying the current and potential boundaries, and recommending some possible adjustments. With that being said, let's go ahead and review our agenda. Hopefully everyone has a copy of the agenda in front of them. So the first item, which we just took care of, was the call to order and the roll call. The next one is welcome and introductions, which you've also successfully taken care of. Next will be the approval of minutes from previous meetings. And as we discussed with the committee prior to, we want to provide them with an opportunity to review the minutes that they haven't seen currently. So we're going to hold off on that agenda item until the following meeting. Is that okay with the committee?
Yes, because I know none of us were distributed the minutes in the nick of time, so that would be more appropriate.
Okay, excellent. So then that really allows us to head into the next part of our agenda item, which is the oral communications and public comment. If anyone has not taken the opportunity to pick up a speaker slip from the back, from the reception area, please go ahead and do so. We're going to collect those right now, and I'm going to call you up after having handed them to the chair of the committee. So it looks like we only have a couple. I want to make sure that people take that opportunity to grab some. If not, I'm going to go ahead and hand these to the committee chair.
And as you'll notice on the agenda, we have 2 areas where there's public input. This one under oral communications and public comment. And this is usually a time when people talk about an issue that's not on the current agenda. And the public input in item number 5 is usually around what's been presented to you here today. So I won't turn anyone down if they say something over and above that, but usually after the presentations we like to get some more community input and have more discussion. And also, before I get the public comment, I would like to ask this board if they would be willing. We've had 3 meetings so far, and the way I've seen it the last 3 meetings is we talk about the redistricting process, then we have a group discussion, and then we do the presentation of the mapping tool. What we found is that by the time you get to the mapping tool, if we took that second and the group discussion third, a lot of the questions were answered by talking about the mapping tool. So I'm going to suggest to this committee, if they're willing, that we would do the redistricting process presentation and the advancement project mapping tool demonstration first, and then get feedback that people can talk about all those together. So unless there's any objection, I think that'd be a lot smoother. Okay, but with that, we'll go back to item number 4, and that's oral communications and public comment. We're going to start with Matt Grocott, followed by Michael Stogner, followed by Bernardo Huerta.
So you all can come on up to the front of the room and you'll have this mic available to you. And just a couple of housekeeping notes. We want to let you know that the supervisor is more than welcome to welcome any speakers up to the front of the room to speak. However, the speakers will be limited to generally 2 minutes, which is dependent on the number of agenda items that we're considering tonight. Please go ahead and fill out a speaker's card. And as the commissioner mentioned there, we would like to hopefully encourage you to speak towards the latter item, which is agenda item number 5. So with that, why don't you come on up?
First, I want to open my comments with, it's not very comfortable to stand here because of who I am as a council member in San Carlos and who you are as Board of Supervisors. Not to ignore the rest of the board here, but mostly I'm speaking to the 2 members of the board who are Board of Supervisors. The minutes that are following this process are getting more and more muddled. I'm reading from the minutes from the Half Moon Bay meeting that I attended, at which I challenged the board's existence, because at the Board of Supervisors meeting on April 9th, there was never a motion or a second to create this committee. And I pointed that out to the board, that was the case. Their minutes that were written reflecting the April 9th meeting actually stated what they had done, and they had not done a motion or a second. But when the president of the board asked county council about that, the words of the county council was to simply change the minutes to reflect the spirit of what had happened. Now, from Half Moon Bay's minutes, it says that members of the public, that would be myself, challenged the existence of the committee due to the perceived failure of the board to comply with proper motioning and seconding protocol. There was no perception problem at all. There are only facts of what actually happened, and I presented those facts. The last thing I want to say here is that I am not letting go of this. I will be going to the civil grand jury with the issue, and as I've researched this issue, I have found other areas with the county where I'm not pleased with how they keep their minutes and how they take action. And I will be requesting that the civil grand jury will look into it. Thank you.
Michael Stogner, followed by Bernardo Huerta, followed by Julio Garcia.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Michael Stogner. I'm a resident of San Mateo County for all 63 years of my life. The last 12 I've been what's known as a victim's advocate in San Mateo County. Tonight, I just wanted to follow up. I also happen to be one of the members of the public that spoke at the 6:15 meeting, and I also say that this committee does not legally have standing. I wanted to follow up with another elected official that spoke at that meeting. Her name was Sabrina Brennan, and she's a Harbor Commission. I'm not sure what the whole title is, but that's one of the things she is. I also met her back in 2010 as a citizen who kept driving over from the coast to make sure that the Charter Review Committee of 2010 actually videotaped and made available to the public the meeting. And if it wasn't for her coming to 3 separate meetings demanding videotaping and record keeping, the Charter Review Committee videos would have never existed. So now just a short history of San Mateo County and the Board of Supervisors and how we got to this particular event tonight, these are my opinion. Supervisor Gary Hill violated his oath between 2006 and 2008. After he became a supervisor, he then ran for assembly. He won and it left an open seat in 2008. December 16th of 2008, the supervisors appointed Carol Groom against the wishes of 20 groups. That would include all political groups and 2 citizens. I was one of the citizens. The other citizen was a man by the name of Dave Pine, who made a great speech on democracy. There were 5 people who spoke to appoint Carol Groom. One of them happens to be on this committee, and his name is Bill Mack. He's not here tonight, he's here. In 2009, the grand jury of San Mateo County told the Board of Supervisors, you should have never appointed Carol Groom. It was the wrong thing to do. What the supervisors did was they chose to ignore the grand jury, and they just didn't answer. And what they did was they formed this thing called the Charter Review Committee in 2010, and they gave them the problem of solving how should we do district elections or should we do at large. Also, one of the people that they appointed on this, I think it was 17-member committee, happened to be a gentleman that Sabrina and I noticed didn't even live in San Mateo County, and he was a representative for, I think it was San Cita. Could be off on that, but I think Roseanne Faust took his place. So after that happened, in 2010, the Charter Review Committee had, I forget how many meetings, I think 6 months of meetings. And their final recommendation goes like this. 14 of the members said, we think you should put on the ballot, whether we agree with it or not, you should put on the ballot the district versus at-large issue. And the supervisors, and one of them is here tonight, Adrian Tissier, chose to go against 14 members of the Charter Review Committee, and she chose not to go and put it on the ballot. Now also, there was a very nice lady that spoke at a Charter Review Committee meeting in Half Moon Bay, and she promised San Mateo County that we will sue you if you do not at least put this on the ballot. That's all it was. It was a very pleasant conversation, and I'm thankful that she and her law firm followed through with their promise. The Board of Supervisors did not put it on the ballot. We did get sued. Tonight, currently, San Mateo County taxpayers have paid out over $1 million for that behavior.
Mr. Stogner, your time's been long up, so
Okay.
I would ask you to please sit down. Bernardo
Okay,
Huerta,
I'm
followed by
sitting down.
Julio
Thank you.
Garcia.
Bernardo Huerta, resident here of East Palo Alto for 48 years. But what I'd like to see is this District 4 include, East Palo Alto and areas that are economically the same, or, areas that are industrial, from here to, to Redwood City, the neighborhood where supervisors from. What do you call that area? For the North Fair Oaks, our economies are the same, pretty much. We all start little gardening businesses and all. We're not opening offices and stuff like that. Maybe a dentist's office or something, but these are the things that we need, M1, M2, commercial space. We need to be linked together in order to have more say in this county. It's not always good to go forward to try to make this county number 1, number 5, as being most expensive in all the United States, There are a lot of other people who don't have the economics of everyone else in this county, and I'd like to, work on for you folks to group these people together here in the south of this county, because otherwise, we are slowly eliminated because we get zoned out, little by little. In the Fair Oaks area, there's been an effort to rezone a lot of businesses in that area. Here in East Palo Alto too. We're not gonna, we probably could work at offices, but we're not the ones, really requiring them. But we require other elements for our economy. And that's what I'd like for you folks to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Julio Garcia? Can someone do me a favor? Can someone move that chair there? I can't see the speakers at all. I can just hear you. There you go.
Julio Garcia, Redwood City resident. Good evening. We are aware in the community of the lawsuit that was filed in 2011 on behalf of Latino and Asian voters. We are very concerned about the lack of outreach in the community. During the last 2 weeks, we came here to City Hall, the library, the YMCA, the senior center, the offices of the county, the third floor, everywhere to look for flyers or any brochures or any information about this meeting, and it was none. The only one, it was one poster up there, and that was it in the whole community. So if the community doesn't know, especially Latinos, right here in the community, they won't attend these meetings right here. And this is an issue that we have. I mean, we at the Board of Supervisors, they approved funding to do outreach in the community, and we haven't seen any outreach in this community. I don't think one flyer right here will work. So we went to the library, and we went 4 or 5 times to check if there were any flyers or any materials about this meeting tonight. So the reason that we know is word of mouth. One email that was sent to one is Palo Alto, and they sent that to us, and that was basically it in efforts for the outreach for this community. So I think we need to do a better job outreach in the community, especially in areas that are going to be affected for the redistricting. I think this is very serious for us, and we're here to participate, and we're here to support you, but, you know, where's the outreach?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mateo Rios, followed by Robert Rubin.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to read this letter on behalf of some of the people that we've been meeting up to talk about this district.
Sure.
In the southeast region of San Mateo County, including East Palo Alto, East Malo Park, Redwood City, North and East Fair Oaks communities, we comprise a diverse working class population. Historically, our community has been severely underrepresented. In fact, this is the reason East Palo Alto became an independent city, separating from Palo Alto to provide for greater representation of our community. The separation from Palo Alto, the 101 freeway naturally cuts off our communities from the west side of this county's southern region, including us from Arlington and other more wealthy areas that do not encounter the same barriers as we to health, safety, education, and employment. East Palo Alto, Redwood City, North Fair Oaks, and East Malo Park has one of the youngest populations in San Mateo County, with a large portion of our community being under the age of 50 and between the ages 18 and 24. Our population is mostly Latinos, African Americans, and Pacific Islanders. We are culturally diverse and multilingual population. Most of us speak a language other than English, such as Spanish, Tongan, or Samoan. We share largely multi-family houses and are one of the only areas with rent control as opposed to single-family homes. We are mostly renters as opposed to homeowners, with a disproportionately large homeless population. We experience high rates of unemployment and incarceration in our communities, and high rates of high blood pressure, hypertension, and asthma. Across our racial and ethnic diversity, many of our families have a family member or a child in contact with the criminal justice system. We have high dropout rates and high rates of incarcerated youth and teen pregnancies.
Mateo, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up. You're well over your 2 minutes. Do you want to submit that? You can submit that to the committee.
Definitely.
Okay, why don't you do that, and we'll make sure it gets on the record. Robert Rubin?
transparency is something that we can all agree is essential to any process along the lines of what we're doing here. And it's a little disturbing that no one associated with the formal presentation of this event is willing to acknowledge that there was a lawsuit that prompted why we're here today. And I think the community understands that, but I think it's important for this body to acknowledge that and know that there were problems, we're trying to move forward, but that things weren't always so. And I think that history and that backdrop is important to go forward. We need to acknowledge what has gone down in order to go forward together. And I think that this is the fourth meeting. I've been to 3 of the 4, and I've not heard a word. The word lawsuit has never been mentioned. And I think that's unfortunate. I think that this body needs to acknowledge that. I think that there are members of the community who don't know the history. We certainly heard Julio Rios talk about it tonight, and but many others don't know about it. And I think that they should, because it puts it in context as to what we're trying to do now. When the young woman who was just talking about the various issues confronting the Latino community, she needs to know that this county was brought kicking and screaming to the table only because of a lawsuit. And we shouldn't just go forward saying, well, let's voluntarily come forward and have this wonderful meeting and talk about moving the district elections. There are important issues of power here, and this county has resisted from a grand jury recommendation to its own votes to deny the people the right to have a vote as to whether they would move to district elections. That's important to know. It's not to say that we dwell on that, but we acknowledge it and we move forward. But acknowledging is an important piece of that.
Your time is up. Okay, thank you very much for those that want to make public comment. We're now going to move to the presentations, the first one being the redistricting process, and then it'll be followed by the advancement project mapping tool demonstration, followed by a group discussion so we can talk a lot about what concerns individuals have here or groups have with the lines, or whether they like them just the way they are. Douglas Johnson, you're on.
Thank you. It's good to see you again. I do want to start actually introducing Justin Levitt from my staff as well, over here in the front row. At the next meeting, I have a scheduling conflict, so Justin will be making the presentation. So, I want to walk through a little bit of general information about redistricting and information specific to this process. The first question to answer is why redistrict? Why does anyone redistrict? And despite its often nefarious reputation, I like to think that redistricting is really a noble process, because it is a process by which we ensure equal representation for everyone. Ensure that each district has an equal number of people in it, and thus each member of the board represents the same number of people, and those people have an equal voice. It is often spoken about in the same voice with gerrymandering, which is not synonymous with redistricting. Gerrymandering is the abuse of the redistricting process for some other purpose other than equal representation, such as partisanship, which is the usual context that it's brought up in. So I do want to make clear that redistricting is essentially a step to ensure equal representation. Gerrymandering is the abuse of that process. And redistricting does take place every 10 years. So after each census, every jurisdiction that has election districts has to look at them and see if they are still an equal population, and if not, to update them. There are also jurisdictions, such as counties in California, that can revisit this process more than once every 10 years if there's some need, such as this process for the county. And so that's the basics of why do we redistrict and when do we redistrict. Specific to this process, we are here because of the vote of the people to switch to district-based elections. Previously, there were districts in the county, but they were just used for the eligibility of candidates. You had to reside in a given district to run for that supervisorial seat, but the elections were still at large. So, as various speakers have mentioned, there was a lawsuit, and following the lawsuit, there was a vote of the county voters who approved Measure B, and that changed so that now only the residents in a given district will vote for their supervisor. So that's what I think that's what the county board referenced when they formed this committee to say, we drew the districts and we updated them so their population balanced in 2011, but this committee's task is to look at them and see if the current districts work or if some changes are needed now that those districts will actually be used for the election, not just to establish eligibility for the candidates. And then, so as mentioned here, just a quick timeline, the November 2012 was the election, and then in April of 2013, the board did form this committee and started this outreach and decision process. And there will be more of the specific timeline that this committee is taking later on. So despite most impressions, if you follow state redistricting and things like that, there are in fact rules for redistricting. It starts with federal rules. There is, under the U.S. Constitution, a requirement of equal population. There has to be, as I mentioned before, there has to be an equal number of people. And note that it's not voters, it's not citizens, it's not people over 18, it's people of all ages and every characteristic. So each district has to have an equal number of people. It doesn't have to be precisely perfect for county supervisorial districts, but very, very close to balance. 1 or 2% off is probably fine. If you start getting up to 4 or 5%, you're probably pushing your luck. And even those small deviations need to be justified. There has to be reasons why a district might not be perfectly balanced, such as getting it to perfect balance would require splitting a city or splitting a neighborhood or something like that. We'll get into one of those reasons later on. But the first requirement is equal population. The next federal requirement is the Voting Rights Act. You may have heard in the news today that the Supreme Court struck down one provision of the Voting Rights Act. That was Section 5, and it only applied to 3 California counties. The Supreme Court ruling has nothing to do with San Mateo County and changes nothing about the requirements of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and the county's redistricting. So I should have updated the slide, but it was so quick I didn't have a chance. So Section 2 still applies, where essentially the rule is every racial, ethnic, and language group needs to have an equal opportunity to elect the candidates of its choice. Now, obviously, that is driven by numbers. We only have 2 members of a given group. You're not going to be able to elect a supervisor without their support from other groups. But the basic rule is equal opportunity for racial, ethnic, and language minority groups. Although in California now we have to not use minority so much. The legal term is protected class. So in a state like California where everyone's a minority, the law actually is protected classes. Section 5 used to apply to some counties. It never applied to San Mateo County, so it's getting eliminated today, or at least suspended today, doesn't impact this process. And then no racial gerrymandering is what the U.S. Supreme Court has said, that race can be a consideration, and you'll see there's a lot of data that we use in this process from the census and other sources based on race. But race cannot be the predominant consideration. So you can't just throw up a map of where a given protected class population lives and draw a line around it. Redistricting is still about communities and neighborhoods and cities and representation, not about just drawing around colors. So that's federal requirements. The state also has a couple of mentions of redistricting in the state codes. First of all, it says counties can consider topography, geography, cohesiveness, and compactness in communities of interest when drawing lines. Note that in the language this is may consider, they're not required considerations, but it does give some guidance on things to look at when drawing these lines. Then the second state law is that the current redistricting will not impact the term of any current supervisor. So wherever these lines are drawn, none of your current supervisors will have their current terms changed. These lines all kick in for the next election and impact who can run and who will be elected in the next election. Then there is where most of the discussion about redistricting ends up, which is what the courts have termed traditional redistricting criteria. These are things we most often hear about, things like communities of interest. This is where the courts have said communities of interest are a legitimate consideration when drawing lines, and there are justification for small deviations in population, such as keep a city together, as I mentioned earlier. The second of the traditional criteria is following visible, either natural or man-made boundaries. So using freeways as a border, using rivers as a border. This is really for the voters. The idea that the courts have endorsed is that by making the districts follow clear boundaries, it's easier for people to get involved and engage and to organize their neighbors. It's a lot easier to say, hey, let's get involved in this election and go knock on doors to support candidate X. And the doors we need to knock on go from the freeway to the river than it is to say, well, they go up Main Street, then they jog over a block, and then they go up a block, and then they go over a block. So that's the idea here, is that clear features make it easier to define and thus easier for the voters to understand the districts. Along that same line, districts that are compact, and obviously we want them to be contiguous, not pockets around the county, but compactness is considered a way of making it easier for the voters to understand the lines and thus to get engaged in the elections. Other traditional criteria that the courts have said are legitimate considerations but are somewhat lower profile. The first is continuity in office. This is the idea where it's okay to look at where the incumbents live to avoid pairing them, for the idea that re-election decisions should be up to the voters. The current board, whether or not they get re-elected in another term, should be up to the voters, not decided by redistricting lines that put two of them together and tell the voters, sorry, you voted for two of them before, now you can only have one. It's not a requirement. I should emphasize the traditional criteria are not requirements. They're really things that we balance and that you will balance, hopefully, as you offer input in these decisions. The next consideration is population growth. If you're in a high growth area, you can actually underpopulate slightly a district that you think will grow faster than the others, so that as the decade goes on, the overall balance of the district stays more balanced than it would otherwise. San Mateo County is not exactly a rocketing growth county, so this is less of a consideration than it is elsewhere, and growth rates are nothing now compared to what they were anywhere in 2001. So it's less of a consideration now than it has been. Then the last traditional criteria is preserve the core of the existing districts. This is the idea that the voters, to some degree, are familiar with the current districts and have hopefully gotten involved in elections and had some organizational experience of getting people involved in the election. So if one of the other criteria doesn't dictate a change, the courts have said it's okay to not make a change, even if there's still a small 1 or 2% deviation, in order to avoid disrupting those existing relationships and that experience. You can keep a very small deviation. You don't have to make it perfectly balanced. So those are the rules. Then we get into the demographics. And the numbers really drive this, for one thing, at the total population level. So we start with census data. And the 2010 census was the most recent. It found that the county had 718,451 people. So because we've come a little ways from the 2010 census, at the county's request, we've actually gone through and looked at growth rates. We've gotten some data from the state and some data from the Census Bureau. You can see at the bottom of the left-hand side here, we have we have an updated population count. The county has grown to about 736,000 people now. So that's the number that we're looking at. When we look to calculate how many people per district, we divide that by the number of districts, and our target population is 147,214 people per district. So as we put communities together and draw these lines, we need to be right about 147,000 people. Within this data, so that's our total population number. For the Voting Rights Act, and to ensure that we're complying with that, we look at a lot more data. So this is where we get into voting age population and citizen voting age population. So from the 2010 census, we get a voting age population of 558,000 and some change. So these are people that are old enough to vote. And you can see we have in the county 25% Hispanics in the total population, about 42% non-Hispanic white, 26% non-Hispanic Asian, and then 6% other. As just about everywhere in the southwestern United States, the Hispanic numbers go down when you look at voting age population, because the Hispanic population tends to be younger than the general population. And that's true here in the county. Among the voting age population, Hispanics are 22.8%. Non-Hispanic whites go up to 45%. Non-Hispanic Asians stay right at just over 26%. and the other population is 5.8. Those two sets of numbers are from the 2010 census, which for all of the census's problems is really the gold standard of demographic data. Because they go door to door, they get very, very precise data. But you may remember that the census doesn't ask, are you a citizen or are you not? And when we're looking to count eligible voters, we need to know if people are eligible to register and vote, and thus we need to know citizens. So we get that data from the Census Bureau, but not from the 2010 census. Because they don't ask that question, it's included in a different census survey called the American Community Survey. That is a giant mailer and phone survey. It goes out to 1 million households a year in the country. So it's pretty reliable. It's not as reliable as the 2010 census. It's not as precise. But it is a good source, and it's what the courts have said we look at for these numbers. So when we go to citizens of voting age, we've gone from 718,000 in the county as a whole. We're down to about 451,000 when we take out everyone who's under 18, and we take out people who are not citizens. Of that number, about 16% are Hispanics, 53% are non-Hispanic white, 24% are non-Hispanic Asian, and about 7% are other. And that's really what the courts have focused on as a definition of eligible voters. Then we also have one more piece of data, and this comes from the state of California. What we really want to know is the ethnicity of the people who are actually voting when we're trying to measure different ethnic groups' ability to elect. So the closest we get to that is what the state calculates, where they take the voter rolls and they look at surnames. And they count how many people have Spanish surnames, how many people have Asian surnames. And they use lists of surnames that come from the Census Bureau. Because the state is a little behind in catching up to San Mateo County, and the latest data is from 2010, we actually got this county voter roll and ran it ourselves in May of 2013. And you can see we're at 15.5% of registered voters have Spanish surnames, 9% have Asian surnames. Now this is, the ethnicity of the voters, which is great. That's what we want to get for the Voting Rights Act. But the problem is that it is the least accurate of each of these data sets. Obviously, surnames have issues, marriage, all that kind of stuff. Surnames that can be different ethnicities, things like that. So that's why we look at a lot of data. And really our job as the consultants is to keep an eye on this and flag any potential problems for you. But it is out there, it is included, it is in the online website, so that those of you that want to look at this as you're going through have it all available and can look at any of these data fields that you want. Taking it from the numbers to the maps a little bit, as was described, there are definite pockets of more Latino and more Asian American areas of the county. You can see on this map, Latino, I think that actually is the freeway, as the speaker was mentioning earlier, that highlights the lighter colors are more Latino in this map, and this is shown by census tract. But you can really see the concentration in District 4, to some degree in District 5. There's some pockets of slightly more Latino than generally in the county. And then in South San Francisco, there's another pocket of Latino population in District 1. And a small one in District 2. Asian Americans, you're probably fairly aware of this, but again, you're getting a dense Asian American population up in Daly City in District 5, some in District 1, and then another pocket down here in Foster City in District 2. So this gives you a little bit of a geographic sense of the numbers that were on the previous slide. One thing that you'll see as this process goes on is various plans. This slide shows you the demographics, the same numbers I went through, but broken down for each district. So you can see District 1, District 2, District 3, District 4, District 5. And here are those same categories I was just talking about: total population, voting age population, citizen voting age, and then registration by surname, and then the most recent data on turnout by surname, which is that 2010 data that I talked about from the state. So you get this broken down by each of the 5 districts. And for every plan that's submitted, whether you use the online system to submit it, whether we as the consultants draft it, taking it based on direction or comments, or whether you draw something on a napkin or on a piece of paper and we import it into the computer system, we'll generate one of these sheets so that you and the committee can compare all the plans on equal footing with equal amounts of data for each. which contributes to the process in considering these maps. So, as mentioned, November 2012 was the election. The committee was formed in April. And then we are now in the 4th of 5 first-round meetings. The 5th meeting will be on July 11th. Then in July, we'll also release the draft plans based on your comments and on the direction of the committee. We'll be drawing draft plans, and we'll release to everyone any maps that members of the public have drawn as well. So we encourage you to get those maps in as soon as you can, so that the public has more time to consider them and weigh in on them. That will be followed by a second round of public meetings. The dates aren't set yet, but in August and September, we'll be going back to each district. Just like in this first round, the committee will hold a meeting in each district to discuss the draft plans, comment on the drafts, hear from the public about the draft plans, and to revise those plans. They will be changing throughout this process as we get comments from the public and direction from the committee. With the committee aiming to have its recommendation done in September or early October, and that recommendation sent to the board for action in October or early November. So that's our big time frame. Really, the focus right now is this first round of meetings that ends July 11th, and then the second round in August and September. That last meeting of the first round will be the 11th in Millbrae, up at the community center. So certainly welcome, even though we're holding one in each district, you're certainly welcome to attend all or as many as you can. Now you notice I mentioned a lot, looking for the public to draw plans, looking for the public to comment on communities. Really, the definition of community of interest, despite a lot of academics trying to become very famous for coming up with the right definition, to this day, it still comes down to what do the people in that community define as their neighborhood or as their community. So is your neighborhood based on a park? Is your neighborhood based on a local school? How do you and your neighbors identify your area? Or in an area like this with lots of relatively small cities, is your community of interest the whole city? And it needs to be kept together to have one voice at the council. That's what this committee is looking to hear from you. And also, what is your community and how is it treated in the current maps? Do you like where the lines are now? Would you prefer to see the lines drawn somewhere else in order to better represent your community? We're definitely looking to hear from the public. That's the whole reason for this outreach. And how can you share that opinion? Well, you've got the usual ways. You can send in an email. You can comment, as some of you thankfully did, the first public comment. You can comment when we go to general discussion in just a few minutes. You can send a letter or an email. And one of the things I love about this process and how the county's doing this is you're not limited to just saying, I like that, I don't like this. If you don't like something, hop online, as you'll see in a minute, and fix it. You get to take the power of the pen, or in this case, the power of your mouse, and draw the plan and submit your own plan. You don't have to just comment on plans that the consultants or the board or other people have drawn. So it's an opportunity to go above and beyond what's normally possible in public comment. And we will come back to this to reinforce this, but there is lots of information. I think we actually have a website we're going to show in just a second here. But you've got the website, you've got email address, you can send to the county office, care of the District Lines Advisory Committee. And we'll go into more detail on the district mapping tool. You want to show the website? Yeah? Okay. So as the chairwoman mentioned, we're going to switch over and do the website or the online redistricting tool demonstration now, and then we'll get to the public comment period. Switch it over.
So next up, we're going to call up Chris Ringwald of the Advancement Project to give us a demonstration on the smcdistrictlines.org website, which is an online mapping tool that Chris is going to tell you a little bit more about.
Hi everybody, I'm Chris Ringwald, as mentioned, from the Advancement Project. We're a civil rights organization bringing the mapping tool to this process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and hopefully you guys will be able to hop on and continue to use it at home. So basically, this process, you guys commenting here, is the right thing to do, the best thing to do. Feel free to draw on the maps on the tables, fill out comment cards. Everything on the website is meant to complement, not supplant any of that. Actually, speaking face-to-face with commissioners in this hearing is a great way to be engaged. We have the website, so you can additionally be engaged from at home, or if you guys know others at home that also want to draw their own maps, their districts and communities of interest from the comfort of their homes. So I'll dive right in. I'm from the Advancement Project. We're a national civil rights organization with offices in Washington, D.C., Sacramento, Los Angeles, and I personally telecommute from Oakland. We have this site basically for civic engagement purposes. We want more people involved in the process, so we're really thrilled with the turnout tonight, and we hope you are using our website to become more civically engaged and more taking more responsibility of basically the representatives that represent you. And we worked in the statewide redistricting efforts in 2010-11. We had a statewide site called Redraw CA, and we're basically using the same technology in San Mateo County. And so I'll be remiss if I don't thank the James Irvine Foundation and the San Mateo County for helping to make this possible, having this great online tool available for you guys. And so we partnered with the WeDrawTheLines.org and basically the California process, and really we're stepping it up for San Mateo. So let's dive in, and you can see it. If you go to smcdistrictlines.org, and there are flyers in the back if you want to see more information or remember that URL, you'll basically be able to do two things. Draw your own communities of interest, districting plans, and make maps like those that Doug showed you, and then view district maps that others have made. So if you'd like to save and make your district map public, you can do so and share them with your friends, your coworkers, or the public at large. I will say this slide isn't updated. We now have a link where you can comment directly. So if you don't want to make a map and you just want to comment and say, leave my district the way it is, or change my district the way I want to change it, you can click on a link and submit a comment directly to folks, and you don't have to make a map. So again, you don't have to make a map if you don't want to, but as a cartographer by profession, I say maps are fun and I really enjoy them, and I think you will too. So let's dive in and see what this site has to offer. So first, you can view the district maps that are up there by clicking on this View District Maps, and you'll see the existing boundaries up currently. And as different maps are created by users, you'll see them up there. And when drafts that the commission puts out come up, you'll also see them up there as well. And so for Commissioner Laura Martinez, she'd asked for some stats on the website. As of last week, for the daily city hearing, we had 150 users on average spending about 5 minutes on the site, which is pretty good. That means there are some people that are probably coming in and just doing something quickly, but there are other people that are actually spending 5 to even 10 minutes, crafting communities of interest and plans. So I wanted to report that back to you, and hopefully those numbers will keep growing as we have more and more presentations. So for 3 weeks, we're thinking that's not too bad of a start. So the other thing you can do on the site is find your lines, find where the districts are. So the maps in the back that are beautiful and available for you guys. You can see your districts here, but if you want to see them at home online, you can do the same thing. And you do that by clicking on the Draw Your Lines portion of the website, and it'll take you into a mapping platform similar to Google Maps, mapping websites you've seen before. But the main addition is it has all the data that Doug talked about in the previous presentation, all the redistricting data that you can use to draw communities of interest plans or your own districts. So like other mapping platforms, you can zoom in and out with the zoom bar on the left. You can click to pan and move around the map. And as you hover over different parts of the map, you can see different populations for different districts, so you can see how close they are to equal population. You can also type in your address and just dive directly to your home address or your work address and see what district that address is. So here I'm selecting something in San Mateo, the site of our first hearing. And so you can see the population for your area as well and begin to make the district or your community of interest right where you live or work. You can also add different boundaries. So if you want to add city boundaries or zip code boundaries, you can add those right on top. So these green boundaries are city boundaries, and they may help you, especially if you want to keep your city whole, see where those boundaries are in relation to the district boundaries. So you can see right here, the city of Belmont, this green boundary right there. Sorry, it's hard to keep the pointer straight, but it doesn't quite align with the district that kind of cuts it in a piece there. So possibly if folks in the city of Belmont wanted to have their city whole in the district, they could use our site to redraw it, to remap the district they want to have based on the city boundary. One thing that can help them also is to look at different thematic indicators or different socioeconomic data of income, race, ethnicity, housing that they can also use to help them draw districts. So if I click up here to map some, for instance here I'm mapping Latino population just like Doug mapped earlier. So you can see The darker areas have higher concentrations of Latino population, so you can see lighter areas have fewer Latinos in them. So that may also be helpful in seeing where you want to draw a district. So finally, I'm just going to show you the example of how to redraw one of your districts. Basically, from the left, you click on the green Go button on the district that you'd like to redraw, in this case, District 2. And I'm going to fill in this city of Belmont. But when I start, I'm going to see all these red blocks come into play. And this is District 2. And you'll notice the blocks go out into the bay. And not many people live in the bay, so when you move these blocks around, you're not going to see your population change very much, at least I hope not. But just to note that the districts, like the maps that Doug has shown and the maps in the back of the room, they do technically extend into the water. So you'll notice that, and I wanted to make sure to point that out to you. But in this example, I want to make sure that the whole city of Belmont is in this district. So I'm just going to take my mouse and click on the add. And then I'm going to draw a little shape to match the city boundaries, and just click, click, click around the city boundaries to add them to this district that I want to draw. So here you can see my mouse clicks. I've just click, 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 clicked all around the boundary. And if I click on the final vertex of my shape and basically fill it out, then I've added this red district and made the city of Belmont whole. And all the information and data at the bottom has updated. The population, the race, ethnicity of this new district that I've just drawn has been updated. And I can continue adding more districts to this plan, or I can stop there and say I'm fine with my district. I'm ready to save it or submit it to the commission for consideration. So the last and important thing is to save your map, because if you spend all this time making a district, the district you want to have, you don't want to lose it. So don't forget to click Save, which you can do by clicking this blue Save Boundaries link. And when you do that, if you don't have an account already, you're going to be asked to make a free account, because just like most websites, if you want to actually save something on the website and come back to it later, you're going to need your own email address and password to access it. So it's totally free. There's no money and no private information asked. Just your email and a password is all you need. And if you'd like to say what part of the state you're living in, or you'd like to say what organization you're from, you may do that, but that's not required. And then finally, as Doug was mentioning earlier, don't forget the description. Just because you're drawing lines or making your own plan, it may not be apparent to the commission why you're drawing them that way. So don't forget to type in your description as to why you want to have your district the way it is, your community of interest the way it is. And that'll be really important for them in considering it. And once you've saved it, you can submit it to the commission. The direct link email is right there. Or you can save it and bring it in yourself as a paper map, or bring it in as a comment here to discuss. So that is it. I want to thank you very much for your time.
Chris, could maybe you talk about, for those in the audience that say, well, that's lovely, but I don't have a clue about how to use a computer. I never will use a computer. I don't want to go to that much trouble. What can they do?
Gotcha. Good question. So if you don't have a computer and you never will use a computer, then basically you're going to have some of the maps that the consultants have put out that you can literally draw right on them. And these are very helpful. As Doug was saying, you can write any of your comments on a napkin or say it verbally in here. But I will say, in addition to that, for the website, we're having trainings around the county, so that if you're new to it and you want to understand it, you will get training and have a better understanding and be able to submit. I've seen some trainings in action, and people have been picking it up fairly quickly. You'd be surprised with a little bit of training, and especially with the desire of a lot of people who want to participate and be engaged, how quickly they'll pick it up. But thanks for the question.
Great.
So I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, I think Doug's gonna make a comment.
Oh, excuse me.
Let me bring a map up. So now we're going to do the public comment, but as you give your comments, we have the maps around the back, put the map up on the screen. One of the things to remember is that we want to hear your communities of interest, and we want to hear what you think about how the current lines treat your community of interest. But keep in mind that at the next meeting, the committee will be holding a meeting just like this, and then giving direction on what changes it wants to see tested in the map. Not necessarily adopted, but just that it wants to see drawn and brought back to it. So to the degree you can give geographic input, say I want to see this area moved, or I wish this area was with my community in whatever district we're in. That'd be very useful. And remember that everything ripples. So for example, at the last meeting and a couple meetings, we've had mentions of South San Francisco. And the last meeting, someone in particular wanted South San Francisco put in with District 5. Well, which is good input, we're happy to hear that, but it's even better if you can share the trade-off. So if you put that in with District 5, you have to take something out. So the direction the committee will hopefully be giving us is what trade-offs does it want to see made. I'm not saying that's a good trade-off, I'm just using the example of what we said last time. But so as you talk about it, if you can say what you'd like to see moved, and if you want an area moved in or out of a district, how you would offset those population changes would be very useful. And that's exactly what the committee will be looking to do as they give direction for the drop maps. So hopefully that'll help frame what we're looking for in this discussion.
And if I might just add one more thing, for those of you that don't want to do it on the computer and you just want to do it on a napkin or on that map, when you do that, you can submit that, and then Doug and his group will figure it out, and then it'll come up with all the stats that you saw if you had done it yourself. So don't think that just if you draw the map, it's not going to have the same level of interest for all of us. It will. So keep in mind there's lots of ways to do this. Just be sure you submit, and we'll put that together and then put it up so that it will get recorded and we will take a look at it.
Thank you for that, Supervisor. Now I want to thank Doug and Chris for their presentations. And now is the time for us to hear from you. We really are most interested in, and want to thank all of you for coming out and making time. We want to hear your comments on what are the factors that we should be considering, what are the communities of interest that are most important to you, what are some of the trade-offs, as Doug talked about, that you feel that the committee should be aware of. And with that being said, I want to open it up, and if you could just make a line here in the middle, and we'll have this floating mic here for you, and feel free to come up, and we'll be more than happy to hear your comments. Who wants to be the first break song? There's a lot of people in the room. Oh, here we go. Come on up, sir. Hey, could you please state your name?
2253 University Avenue.
Great.
We have to save our young people. We are giving them only one option: go to jail. Felony, begging for job, never get job. We created $7 million of police budget in East Palo Alto. $7 million. The people come here, don't live here. Take our money away. $14 million out of the $15 million. This city is bankrupt. This is not just East Palo Alto, East Menlo Park, East San Jose, East Oakland, you name it. The problem I begin to find out is not the city council, because the city council is sleeping. They are only for the developer to make money out of condo. I'm not against people making money. Condo should be made on that side, not this side, number one. Year after years after years, mayor, whatever you call it, they don't care who. You know why? Because the people get $60,000, $70,000, keep quiet. Don't let the city council know things. So they are just sleeping. I'm telling you the truth. You want to save the world? Save East Palo Alto, save East Oakland, East Menlo Park, East San Jose.
Please wrap up your comments, sir.
Thank you so much. My thing is that you vote any way you want. Make sure you have the right to use the land to make your own job. Selling strawberry or selling tomato or anything. It's 1,000 times better than $7 million of police budget. I'm not saying that they're not doing their job. They're doing their job, but that's the wrong kind of job.
Sir, your time is up.
Thank you so
Time
much.
is up.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, please state your name and your city.
Thank you. My name is Sharifa Wilson, and I live in East Palo Alto. And I would encourage the committee to consider the factors of interest. The East Palo Alto, East Menlo Park, and the North Fair Oaks area have some distinct characteristics that we have in common. There's, of course, a lot of issues around unemployment, around crime, around education. And those factors need to be included as you're considered, as you're looking at where we're drawing these boundary lines. It was actually good to hear that, well, not to hear, but be informed about the lawsuit, because people do need to be sensitive to that. And that for many, many, many years, our community, the low-income community, have not really had the representation that we felt that represented, the representative that really represented our interests, other than through appointment, not through election. So this is an opportunity for us to really have some input into the election results. And so again, I would encourage you to look at factors of interest, not just population.
Okay,
Thank you, Sharifa.
Next up.
Maybe if I can make a comment for people. You know, some people may not be prepared tonight to actually make comment. Now that you've heard all this information of how we're going to take a look at it as a body, it's really important that you go home, either go on the computer or think about it a little bit. What do you really care about in your community? Or do you care about leaving exactly as it is? The more people we hear from, the better off it is for us to help make that final decision that's going to be recommended to the Board of Supervisors. So I get that a lot of you really aren't prepared tonight because you just heard how we're taking a look at it. It's the first step. But please think about it as much as you can. Send comments in, email us, do the maps. Come to the next meeting. We're going to have a second round of meetings, and you'll see a map that will be drawn based on a lot of the comments, and we'll show maps that other people have put together. And then that may spur you on to say, whoa, I don't want that. If you do that, you take half of us here in East Palo Alto, and you put us, somewhere else, and it doesn't work for our communities of interest. That may be what you want to wait and see if that's desirable, but please give us your input in some way, shape, or form. It's really important for this committee. As I heard from a lot of you, you want your voices heard. That's how you have your voices heard in any of those ways of doing it for us. So I would appreciate that. And again, if anybody wants to speak tonight, please do. If you don't, we won't continue the meeting to torture you all night, but you will have that opportunity. So feel free to talk tonight or send something to us.
And I see we have another person who wants to come up, and I just want to note that for those of us who are shy, who may not feel comfortable coming up to the front of the room, as the supervisor mentioned, there's a variety of ways to provide your input, and I encourage each of you to pick up one of these half slips here, which has the multiple ways via email, fax, through the online tool as well. If you want to provide a written comment here tonight also. So we want to provide multiple options and multiple forms for people, and I want to make sure that you all know them. So can you come on up, please?
Thank you. My name is Letitia Rayson. I'm a resident here in East Palo Alto. And I thank you for the presentation tonight. It's helpful to know kind of what are the factors that will contribute to all of your deliberations, as well as the ability we will have as a community to kind of contribute to the conversation. And I wondered if, just for the purposes of tonight's discussion, you might talk a little bit about the outcome of the redistricting process. Is it solely political or solely for the purposes of being able to elect a representative, or are there other potential outcomes that would impact you as a district that might help inform me as I go back to the website and start trying to assess and draw boundaries?
Okay. I think maybe that would be something we'll have Doug answer. He did kind of go through it, but maybe you need to reinforce what we're looking for.
Very good question. Thank you for asking that. And maybe I can set up and the supervisor can fill in a little specifics, but technically the districts are only for elections. The idea is the board represents the whole county, whether they're elected by district or at large or from district. I always try to tell people the districts really matter on election day and when the candidates file their papers. That's the kind of legal definition. Legally, they really only matter on election day. Different jurisdictions vary on how much they play in. I think every county, the supervisors tend to defer to the other supervisors on issues specific to their district to some degree or another. The city of Las Vegas sets the extreme. In their budget, money raised by redevelopment areas can only be spent in the same district where it's raised, which I think is getting a little bit crazy. And makes, I don't envy their finance officers. But the degree of deference that supervisors give other supervisors, there's always some. It varies a lot by district. I don't know if maybe the supervisors can comment a little bit on past history here in the county. But But yes, I would think whatever has been the tradition will continue to be the tradition of that supervisor is going to find spokesperson for that one, and the people in that district will go to that supervisor first. But that is out of deference and tradition, it's not a legal requirement. Legally, district member election day.
Great. Other comments?
Hi, my name is Almar Levy. I live here in East Palo Alto. This is not the first time I've seen a redistricting process. I did attend meetings of the California Commission, and also prior to moving here to East Palo Alto last year, I used to live in Southern California in Cerritos, and over there Cerritos College, also due to a lawsuit, went from at-large districts to districts, so they had to form a district, so they also had to form districts. The difference is, unlike here in San Mateo County, that there were districts, but just for the purpose of determining candidates, down there were no districts. So anytime that they showed maps, they did put a symbol, triangle, square, circle, whatever, showing the residences of the incumbents. I think for the interest of transparency, anytime there's a district map, you should show the residents of the incumbents. And not because we want to stalk you, but because we want to make sure that that if there are any figures that extend, that it's more transparent. So it's only for the purpose of increasing transparency. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Other comments? Yeah, you have one coming up? Please state your name and your city.
Hello, Kristen Parks. I live in Burlingame. I just want to, I'm not sure what sort of budget you have for publicizing this process, but I just want to reiterate that I've actually tried, I spent a lot of time Googling trying to find out when these meetings are occurring, and this is the first one I finally found. There's a Facebook group that has published all the meeting dates one day wrong. The county website does have them listed, but didn't when I was looking a couple months ago. So I just want to reiterate, get the flyers out there, get on the radio, get in all of the newspapers, get your own Facebook page, your own Twitter, whatever. I would like to be able to find this information easily, and although we have great turnout tonight, I think there are others that would like to have that information too. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, and I would like to respond to that. As the outreach coordinator for this process, we've conducted a really robust outreach effort thus far, and I just want to let you know, we heard a couple of comments about outreach tonight, and I want to address that head on. Some of the things we've done is we've reached out to a variety of community-based organizations. Some of them are in the room tonight, and we're really happy to see from East Palo Alto, from the Music, Rural, and Arts Project, from UCA, etc., to a variety of community leaders as well, particularly those who serve communities of color. In addition to that, the other groups that we've reached out to are libraries, senior centers, homeowners associations, also targeting ethnic media. We've produced a series of display ads that display the times, the locations, the calendar, the full calendar of meetings here today. In addition, using our county channels as well, so city clerks from across the county to the county's Facebook page as well. So we've definitely been doing our due diligence, and I really would like to use this opportunity to enlist your support and your help on that. We're open to any ideas that you might have for how we can further our outreach efforts. And if you have particular suggestions, please go ahead and let us know about that, because it really is our charge and our commitment is to reach across a broad cross-section of the county. Tonight we have a pretty good turnout. The last daily city meeting we had over 70 individuals come out as well. So we're slowly but steadily gaining steam, but really I'd like to enlist your support and your help. I see some real community leaders in the room tonight from different ages, from different ethnicities as well. So help us out. We really want to hear from you as to how we can continue to reach out, continue to spread the word about this very important and very essential issue to the county and to your lives as residents here. So those are just a couple of our current outreach efforts to date. We're always looking for more, so please don't be shy. You have another comment? All right, great.
Thank you. Oh, you're right here. Since you asked about outreach, I just wanted to, I'm Dr. Faye McNair-Knox from One East Palo Alto.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Here in East Palo Alto, it's about relationships. And so for outreach, I think one of the best strategies here is to hire some local people to do outreach, because it's technology is a barrier, so your emails are not going to guarantee. even sending notices to nonprofits is not necessarily going to ensure that the word spreads as widely as you want, because nonprofits are some of the busiest folks in this little village. And, you know, one email just kind of flows into another. The churches, the faith community here in this, I'm just talking East Palo Alto. The faith community, because there you have critical masses gathered where the word can go out. And of course, if there's an opportunity to work with the schools and get the word out through parents, to parents through the children or what have you. But really, we have found that it is by having individuals in the community going around to all of those places where they know the community gathers and spreading the word, that's really one of the most effective strategies here.
Okay, well, thank you for that suggestion, and we definitely will follow up on that. I didn't mention, but we have been doing some pretty robust outreach to the school districts as well. And you can see our outreach flyer in the back of the room there. It's English and Spanish. We encourage you to take one of those and spread the word. If you can be those leaders that Dr. McNair-Knox talked about to help us do that, if you have a venue for sharing this information. This is the first round of workshops. For round 2, we anticipate that we'll receive even more feedback and interest from the community once you're able to see a set of draft maps from the consultant. People often feel a little bit more interested when they see some maps on the table, something to react to. But that's definitely something we will consider. So thank you so much for that suggestion. Other thoughts on that? Come on up. Take your name, please. City.
Thank you. Bob Gomez, 402 East O'Keefe Street, beautiful East Palo Alto, thank God. You know, I don't know what was happening here until I just walked in. There was no advertising in my district or my area. Why? I don't know. Because I don't see very many faces here from East Palo Alto that I know of. Because I don't know why. But were we invited here? I'm sure we are. But where's all my friends, my neighbors? I only see about 6 or 7 people here. And I wish maybe you guys would advertise this more often in different areas. There's a lot of things that we need to talk about. And bridges overpass, water control, water period. I could go on for quite a while, but I'm sure you don't have to all the time. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, sir. Any other individuals who would like to make a comment tonight? Any other folks? Yeah, we got one more? Come on up.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Just a quick comment on communities of interest. I'm not sure Redwood City, and I knew about that with Jeff G., has been included, but clearly I think both Eastern Menlo Park, East Palo Alto in particular, utilize both the schools as well as shopping districts. And I think it's important, if it hasn't been mentioned today, that Redwood City should be included within that community of interest. And also there are many jobs that folks from East Palo Alto actually have there. The other point I wanted to make is that this happens to be District 4, one of the most urban of districts, with the exception, Supervisor, of some lands that are to the west of us. And I don't know if potentially considering removing some of those lands that tend to be less urban might make sense in a restructuring of the district. And we may want to play with those with the software available. Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir. Okay, so unless, oh, we got one more. Come on up, please.
I wanted to thank you all for being here. I'm Aria Florat, 1261 Beach Street, resident of East Palo Alto. I had a question, and I don't know whether it could be answered now or if this is just sort of a comment about future meetings. But I am wondering, I can make a lot of, I feel like, educated guesses about this, but I'm also sort of wondering from all of your perspective, what is at stake here? what happens if the community doesn't get involved in this process? What happens if the lines are drawn badly? What does badly mean? I'm just wondering if we could get a little bit deeper into that kind of conversation.
So, from what I understood, the question was more or less, what's at stake from this process right here? I'm gonna ask Doug to answer that one.
The key thing that the lines decide is who votes in a given election, which is a really simple idea with lots of complex results. And it's interesting, when we talk about communities of interest, 95% of the time, a community wants to be kept together so that it has as much voting power in the election for that one supervisor as possible, and thus, at least theoretically, as much influence with that one supervisor as possible. So if that happens, if your community of interest is kept together, that lets you speak with one voice on election day, and then one would assume speak with one voice or close to one voice on issues that come up. As the supervisor is voting on issues at the board, that lets you return and say, look, we're this group that's involved in the election, we'd like you to listen to our thoughts on this. We do get a few exceptions, where a community, in particular a large community, such as a city, or you get it sometimes when there's really big senior living developments, where the community actually wants to be divided, where they say, look, we don't want to really put all our eggs in one basket of one supervisor. We want to be kept in these two districts, so we're involved in both elections and can go to both of them. That obviously reduces the amount of influence the community has in each election, because there's only half, or about half in each election. But it gives two supervisors who are campaigning in that community on election day. And so it's a trade-off. You know, what's at stake? Well, how much influence do you have when a supervisor is considering a position on a given issue? You know, obviously the policy pros and cons play a big part in decisions, but also the voice of the people in a given district play a voice in those decisions as well. So I hope that helps. It's a little bit of an abstract theory, definitely, but it matters on election day without a doubt, and it matters from policy to policy in terms of how much of a voice a given community has in a given election. Are you in one? Or, you know, to use an extreme example, at the state level, if an incumbent, well, before we had the redistricting commission, if an incumbent thought he had a lot of opponents, or she had a lot of opponents in a given community, they would intentionally split that community up between 4 or 5, or in some cases even 6 districts, so that that community essentially had no voice in any of the 6 elections. You know, instead of having 6,000 voters, they might have 1,000 voters in a given district. So you can really use redistricting to eliminate your opposition, or to take all its power away. That we see most often at state legislatures and Congress, not so much at the local level, but sometimes we do. But really the opposite is really the goal here, which is how do we best consolidate communities, keep them together so they can speak with an effective voice on whatever issues come up.
Great, thanks for that response, Doug. If there are no other, we'll see one more coming on up. We got a couple more. Great, let's go here, and then we'll see.
I just wanted to respond real quickly to the question too, because I think there's a lot more at stake. I think that what this process is going to accomplish, if done properly, it'll bring government closer to you. In that large system, if you, for example, have 1,000 people living there, and you have 5 districts, you've got to compete with 200 other people, 1,000 other people, 999 other people, in order to get access to your member of the board. In a district system, properly done, you only have 1/5 of that. So you only have 199 people you have to get in line with. And so you're closer to government, government's closer to you, and you go in and complain about the pothole that you drove over. The supervisor says, you don't have to explain it to me, I drove over the same pothole, I live in your community. And so all this means is it's bringing government closer to you. And sometimes we don't want that, of course, with privacy issues. But leaving that aside for the moment, it's a good government principle. And so if you as a community keep their feet to the fire and they do it right, it will bring great advantages to the community at large, and certainly to the citizens that will benefit from a properly districted county. So I think there's a lot at stake. And that's why your involvement is critical to make sure that this committee does right, and ultimately, Board of Supervisors does right as well.
Thank you for that. Saw some other hands over here. We'll go to this gentleman here.
Thank you, Julio Garcia, Redwood City. I want you to consider also community landmarks like, schools in the area. Probably, we have some schools right here like McNair, Chavez, Redwood, in Redwood City, Garfield, and other schools right here. Language is also important for us. At the meeting tonight, we have translation. We have the agenda translated, but none of the other materials translated into Spanish. We have one district that we can invest and put the language is Spanish, Tongan and Samoan, like we say, that will be important to us. Community centers, right here, the senior center in East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, that will be considered in our area. That's an important factor for us also. Local owned business too, from the community. Right here we have supermarkets in Midfield Road, we have supermarkets right here in East Palo Alto. All that is ethnic supermarkets right here. And ethnic markets right here in East Palo Alto also, and also the bus routes right here also. We know that the people in the community, especially in East Palo Alto and North Fair Oaks, we travel by bus or we walk. So if we have one district grow, that all that is considered, that will be great. Thank you.
Mr. Gomez, you did a great presentation that you hit a lot of those communities of interest that we're looking at and we want to hear about, and that was perfect. The schools, the locally owned businesses, community centers, you want to keep it all together. That's the type of thing we're trying to hear from the community. What is it you want us to keep together? How do we make it compact enough, but include all the things you want so the community represents you? So that was excellent. That's exactly what we're looking for.
So I see we have a couple, maybe one more hand over here. Come on up, sir.
Yes, the last one. Bob Gomez, 402 East O'Keefe Street, beautiful East Palo Alto, thank God. I agree with Mr. Johnson over here, but one of the things that when I go out to the different areas in this Bay Area, they really don't realize that we're around, or don't even care about that East Palo Alto is part of our community here in the Bay Area. I'll tell you, I'll give you this much, probably most people know already, candidates, if they want to get on a board of some government office, don't even bother to come over here and debate or get us involved in it. Because they say there's not enough power over there. There's not enough people that are voting for or against this measurement. So I would wish that you people would maybe help us out to decide how to vote with an intelligent mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. Any other final thoughts on factors to consider on what's a community of interest to you? I see a hand. You want to come up, sir? And I want to just mention again, this isn't your only time to provide input, so please don't feel obligated at this moment.
In my brain, there is an East Stanford. I am having white moral justification. I behave like a white. But I feel like a black. Because they always give the wrong message. The problem is culture. People of culture, not people of color, you understand? If people tell me people of color, I think they are insulting me. Now I give you one word, you write the word down, ENNEAGRAM. Write that down. ENNEAGRAM. .net or .com. That shows you how to organize and survive. And Catholic use it, Muslim use it. Look at the amount of people that are in the world. They are dominant. So this method must work. So your job is to give people an alternative. Not just send them to jail, hire more police.
Okay.
I'm not against police. But I against the law that is set up in such a way that all these young people cannot get a job. Why? Felony.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I mean, this is really hideous. It's a mark. It's a really black mark on democracy. That means they are condemned. You don't believe you go to job training.
Thank you, sir. We're gonna have to wrap it up. Thank you very much. So unless there are other comments, we're gonna conclude the evening. And before we do that, I want to turn it over to the committee and provide them with an opportunity to provide any closing comments, starting with the chair.
Thank you. First off, I just want to say thank you to all of you that came out. And once again, I can't emphasize enough, please give us your input. If you don't feel like we got the word out enough, we'll continue to work on that. We've been working on it since we heard some of that at the last meeting. Because it's new and it's different, I think some people haven't recognized what we're doing. And those of you that have, we're glad you're here. Help us spread the word, though. We will continue to work on that part of it. Also, make sure if you have some more thoughts or comments, either go online, do it, or submit it. Make sure you take that yellow sheet. We really, really, really want to hear from you. It's critical that we get your input. Someone asked about, if communities don't respond, what happens? Well, we're going to get lots of input from lots of communities, and some may scream louder than others as to what they want. But as was said earlier, if you squeeze the balloon here, it's got to come out somewhere else. So if we had in our last meeting, people said, please don't divide Daly City. We're an Asian community, we want to stay together, we're a community of interest. Don't split our city, and we don't even know where they got the rumor. We have drawn no maps. We have done nothing other than have the community meetings to get your input, and those maps won't even begin to be drawn until we get maps from you, input and comments from you. The consultant's going to come up with a couple maps. Then we're going to come back for a second round, and people can say, well, that's crazy. If you did this here in Daly City, that means you're going to put me out in the water. Some of this is going to be, there'll be some moving parts, and you're going to start seeing how the impact from some communities will affect others. And if you make a big change in your community, it could affect another community. At the end of the day, we have to decide which one of those maps may work based on the population, and a fairly equal population. And at the end of the day, we don't have to change a thing if we don't want to. So, I mean, the input, some people have told us, all right, leave it alone. Okay, that's a fair comment. So that's what we're looking for, any and all comments, so we can gather it all, and this body can flesh it out and give us some feedback to the Board of Supervisors. And the ultimate decision makers will be the Board of Supervisors based on the input that they get. So again, your input's important to us, and I can't emphasize that enough. And I'd like to make sure my colleagues here get an opportunity to say anything.
And just quickly, the supervisor comments reminded me that we have a new website that we are launching. It's smcdistrictcommittee.org. It's there before you now. Someone talked earlier about finding sort of a one-stop shop for all information related to this process. This is our effort to do that. We make every effort to respond to the comments and feedback we receive from the public, and this is one example of that, so I encourage all of you to go to that site and check it out. Other comments from the committee?
Any other comments? Laura?
Hello? Hello?
There it is, okay.
I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for coming out and sharing your ideas tonight. It's really important for us to hear what you're thinking about. Our next meeting will be Thursday, July 11th in Millbrae. So if you know people that want to participate, they can come out or share the link to create your own map, but just keep sharing with friends and neighbors, and we want to try to include as many people as possible. Thank you.
Any comments from any of our committee members?
Thank you.
Yes.
Just a short one.
Supervisor Slope.
Let me thank you all for coming out tonight. I know everybody's very, very busy, and your time is appreciated. Let me just ask, I can't see Marshall Wilson. I don't know if he's still here. There he is. There are videos of the meetings that are being held, and those videos, do they get published on this website?
Yes.
So in case anybody, friend or neighbor, has missed tonight's meeting, the video of tonight's meeting will be on that website, which you can, I'm not sure tomorrow if it'll be up or the following day, soon, but you can check it out there. And certainly appreciate once again everybody's time and comments tonight. Thank you.
Yes, please. Annie.
Doug, I was wondering, first I'd like to thank everyone also for coming out tonight. And I was also wondering,
Would it be possible to include on some of the data that you've listed here for the counties, the per capita income for some of these for some of the districts? Because I think to one of the points that were made earlier, that with the districting process, I suspect that future request that comes before the county, that comes before the board, will be around funding. And I'd like for us to get a better sense of which are some of the more wealthier cities that will also help us think about how to diversify economically some of this districts, as well as age groups. To some of the point mentioned earlier around District 4 being one of the younger districts. So it makes me think of Atherton, for instance. If we included it in District 4, would that also help increase the wealth and diversify the age demographic within District 4? But I was wondering if some of that information could also be included perhaps for the July 11 meeting.
The data is not available by district, but we can provide it by city.
Right, yes, that's fine.
Yeah, we can, I think we can get that together by the 11th. We'll certainly try.
Thank you.
They're not here, but that data is also available on the smcdistrictlines.org, the map drawing. You can get poverty data as well as some age data that's both, and you could actually has the source as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay.
Other comments from the committee?
Any other comments? Yes, Rebecca.
Hi, good evening. I'm Rebecca. Thank you also for coming. I just have a quick question, Doug. Say if some of the citizens are comfortable in writing their comments in Spanish, since we have translators, that's okay, right?
Yes, definitely. Actually, we have translators, and Mr. Levitt actually is essentially fluent in Spanish. So.
Okay. Well, citizens, if you're comfortable in writing it in Spanish for your comments, that would be very helpful. So we could, and then there will be some translators, and it will really help us do our votes if you have your comments on that. Thank you.
Yes, Barbara?
Hi, I'm Barbara Arietta, and I do, as the rest of the committee does, thank you for coming tonight, but tonight is not the last chance by no means. If you have the ability to travel to Millbrae, then I would suggest that you get on the horn and advise your colleagues and comrades to come to Millbrae for all those comments that weren't said tonight, because people apparently did not know about the meeting. And I see that there are some people in the audience who have come to several of the meetings. So I would like to see your faces at the next meetings also. Thank you.
Any last comments? Okay, once again, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you again throughout the process.